Welcome to the Wednesday, December 15th, 2021 Garrison Board of Education regular business meeting. We will begin with a roll call. Dusty, will you call the roll, please?
Jocelyn Apicello. Here. David Gelber. Here. Madeline Julian. Here. Courtney McCarthy. Here. Kent Schott. Here. Matthew Spicer. Here. Sarah Tormey.
Here. Okay, we'll now have the Pledge of Allegiance. Next on our agenda, we have approval of agenda or agenda changes. Recommended changes this evening?
I have one item, recommending to move up the new business item 12D and E for a capital project change order to follow the capital project updates.
Thank you, Madeline. This is to ensure that we can let you guys go home afterwards. Oh, we could have just kept you all night anyway. That sounds fun. Okay, I think those still make sense. We'll go ahead and move those up. Unless anyone has any objections or concerns. Any other recommended changes? Okay. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby approves the agenda as amended. May I have a motion, please? Seconded. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays? Abstentions? Thank you. Okay. So just don't let me forget we made that change. Okay. Thanks. Next, we have our capital project update with Tetrotek Architects and Calgi Construction. Welcome. Enjoy the nice new podium. Isn't it pretty?
It's a pleasure to be with you again this evening to give you an update on the capital project. Hopefully you guys have had a chance to walk around and see some of the new spaces that the district has been utilizing since our last update in early November. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So the first renovation area was classrooms 22 through 25, which is the area in the back side of the building towards the playground. That area has been complete, substantially complete, since early November, and now we're in construction in the front right-hand corner, which is classrooms 27, 28, 30, and 31. And that area is in the process of being transformed. All the finishes are off the walls. The flooring underlayment has been established. The moisture barrier has been installed. And that area has been primed for painting, and the ceiling is going in right now. So we're on schedule to have that area complete before the end of the year, so which is right on track with where we intended to be for our last meeting. During the winter holiday recess, we have abatement and demolition work proceeding. It's going to be a lot less work than we had anticipated because we were originally going to demolish and abate in the area where we're working right now, and we're sort of ahead of a schedule on that work. So it's actually going to be a very small amount of work. A little bit of demolition in front of the administration offices, and there'll be some other work, hopefully in the server closet and other parts of the building, but a pretty easy, achievable goal for our holiday recess. And then at the start of the year, we'll be moving into the next phase of construction, where the nurse's office and classrooms 11 and 13 are going to be under construction as the staff moves into area of the front corner of the building, which is under construction now, which is classrooms 27, 28, 30, and 31. So we have 3 new classrooms available at the start of the year, and you'll be moving out of 2. And there'll be a 1-week transition from those 2 to the new 3 and 4 spaces. So go ahead. This is a very small, hard-to-read diagram of the building. The yellow in the bottom right-hand corner is the area that's currently under construction. The blue is the area that's going to be under construction in the next phase when we get back from the break. And then the orange in the bottom left is the art room and the collaboration space, which is going to be in construction after that phase is completed, which is probably going to be in the March-April timeframe. So we're moving right along schedule with the original phasing plan through the building. Under that schedule, we're going to have a window of time before, after that portion of the building is done, before the summer begins, to look at other areas of work. As we discussed last time, we're pursuing doing the flooring in the middle school area and also air conditioning and some mechanical upgrades, maybe accelerated in the middle school area, so we'll be in better shape before the end of the school year. But we're still looking into that possibility. Go ahead. So this is a financial summary based on the change orders, which we continue to do an analysis of those change orders and go to you with that as we have those financial issues. These are change orders from October, November, because we weren't with you for our last meeting. So there's a number of them. These are mostly general construction change orders related to enlarging the concrete pads for the mechanical equipment, providing some fencing at those pads, the electric room framing, which is related to the existing conditions in that back area of the stage, which had to be corrected. Temporary fencing at the start of school, that was an old one, which was carried over from before. The minor changes to a finish in the main office. Relocation of materials and fencing due to construction phasing issues. Cutting down the existing doors to allow us to occupy the spaces with the existing doors that were adapted to that purpose. Some demolition in the corridors. As we mentioned last time, we've been, this was not originally intended as a full renovation project, and we've been trying to incorporate full scope of renovation in each space where we go. So we've been taking all the original boards and materials off the wall to clean up the spaces. So we basically have as new spaces in the building, which is a little bit beyond the scope, but that's what those dollars represent, is an effort to try to go in and bring all the spaces up to a certain uniform level of finish. The next one is toilet room wall furring. There's some existing conditions that were found where there was a structural member that was sticking out of the wall. We had to just fur that in so that the wall would be nice and clean for the toilet room, which is over by the nurse's office. And then remobilization costs for the sequencing of the project to allow an additional abatement process to happen, which enabled us to utilize those classrooms. And then modifications to the unit ventilator intakes at the exterior of the building to make the louvers the right size for the units and the spaces. Go ahead to the next slide. These are change orders from December. So these are the recent ones that were just before Thanksgiving. There's some minor trim painting that was in the classroom spaces that just got completed. There's an access opening in your conference room that is being revised for an electric panel, which is going to be located in that location. There are some revisions to the casework in the music and kindergarten room. The slab infill is some holes. We found some trap doors and some openings in the floor that had to get filled in the nurses area, the new nurses area. And then the library wood floor is the front of the library. As you may recall, the library used to be a gymnasium, and you can see the old gymnasium floor in there right now. And where the corridor niche bumps into the library is a transition from the concrete floor of the corridor to the wood floor of the library. And it turned out, when we moved the wall, that there was a difference in elevation there that had to get it dealt with. So that was the cost of redoing that piece of wood floor and replacing it with concrete that manages that transition from one level to the other. It's, again, a typical discovered change. When you move walls, you discover that floors you thought were in line are actually not. And then replacing the grills and toilets, little toilet rooms in the classroom we just finished. That was some demolition which wasn't supposed to happen. They got removed by a contractor and is being replaced. And the corridor heating unit was discovered when we did the locker removal. We found another heating unit behind the lockers that was concealed. So that needed to get removed and brought back to source. So those are the change orders that were part of this most recent phase through the beginning of December. So as a summary of our change orders to date, on the left-hand column is the original contract. These are all of the four main primes: general construction, mechanical contractor, the plumbing contractor, and the electrical contractor. So we have $6 million is the total original contract for the original bids. To this date, we've approved about $290,000 worth of change orders, and we have in the works another $100,000. So the number we had in our head for a contingency on this project was $720. That's what we were talking about before we sort of went into construction. And we've spent about $395, all told, between what we've approved and what we have potentially coming based on what we see in the field. So where we are today, we're at $289. We have another $100,000 we're looking at for a total of $395,000, which, if you take the full contract, is about 6.5% of the overall construction contract, which is still within our original contingency. Go ahead. And those change orders are basically equally split into 3 categories. Changes requested by the district for the purposes of improving the spaces, dealing with the renovation of the walls and things that were requested as improvements. The orange are the field conditions, which we discover as we go through the building, things like additional abatement and other things that we've discovered that need to be corrected. And then the gray is architect-initiated changes, which again are modifications to the existing design for the purposes of the project. So those are the 3 categories. This is a summary of the contract payments to date. So this is our financially what we spent on the main contracts. It again has the $6 million of the original sum, $289,000 of approved change orders, and then that gives us a current contract of about $6.4 million. So of that 6.4, we spent about 2.4 in actual, what we've actually paid them in terms of applications, payment applications to the contractors. So we have another $4 million left that we have not spent that's obligated to the contractors based on where we are today. So we're probably about 45 or 50% done with the actual project. We spent about 37% in terms of actual payments to the contractors. So we're in a good shape. In other words, we have not overpaid based on where we are so far in the job. We're in a good spot in terms of how much we've been billed by the contractors and how much we've spent versus the progress of the job. Go ahead. Okay, this is a new slide. So let me take a little bit of time here so we make sure we understand what this is. Before we went into construction, we had an original budget the bond amount, as you're all aware, is $9.9 million. That's the total amount of money we have to spend without going back to the voters, and we can't do that. That's the entire bucket of money for the project. So when we initially bid the job, we had $6 million for the contracts, those 4 primes. We had an Edutech contract with the vendor who's doing all the telephone, data, and security for the district. They've been working with the district previously. They worked with Tetrotek in the development of the designs, and their contract is about $125,000. And then Train is the mechanical equipment vendor who's supplying the units that we have on site and we're installing throughout the building. So that contract with Train is $857,000. The soft cost allowance for the project is $1.872 million, and the contingency remaining with all those actually is $866,000. So we had in our head a number of $720, but the actual contingency at the beginning of the job turns out to be more closer to $866 because the bids came in favorably versus where we expected them to be versus budget. We could have awarded this project with bids that were closer to $6.4 million and still been on budget, basically. But they came in at 6.1. So we've been in a more favorable position from the beginning of the job. As I just mentioned, we have paid out to our contractors $2.4 million, and then we paid also about half of the Train equipment bill. So the spent column is what the district has paid on the project to date. So out of the 9.9, we spent about $3.9 million on the project to date. That includes about $1 million of soft costs. And then we did an analysis with the help of the district. We performed an analysis of all the projected soft costs through the balance of the project to see where are we financially in the overall job. So we have the pending prime contracts includes all of the approved and proposed pending change orders for the project, which brings us to $4 million remaining on the project, and a total project cost of $6.48. If we approve everything we have on the books right now and pending for the rest of the job that we know about. The Edutech contract was increased by about $20,000 for additional systems that was done by the district to accommodate the building. So that budget has increased to about $244,000. The Train equipment is going to remain $857,000. So that's expected to pay another, as I mentioned, we're about halfway done. We have another half to go, and we'll be paying that over the course of the rest of the job. The soft costs we looked at, the remaining amount that we believe is expected for the job is closer to $520,000, which puts the total project soft cost at $1.57 or $1.6 million, which is about almost $300,000 less than we anticipated for the project. And that includes the additional costs we've been spending for abatement. So we spent about over $100,000 all told on abatement, and we had budgeted closer to $65,000 or $70,000. So we're quite over our abatement allotment because of the work we've been doing so far. But other savings, other costs we didn't have to incur have offset that. For instance, if you recall, we paid about $66,000 for a transformer, but that transformer enabled, and the work of Hudson Valley, the electrical contractor, enabled us to do that utility upgrade without the Central Hudson $35,000 price that we had budgeted for that utility trade. They didn't bill us anything for the transition because the Hudson Valley was able to do it seamlessly without requiring them overtime work to do the installation. So we saved money on them, and we've also saved money on other soft costs. So that puts us in a really good place. Even though we spent about $400,000 all told on change orders, both pending and approved, we have about $750,000 of contingency remaining on the project. So here we are today, halfway done, and we actually have more contingency now than we thought we did at the beginning, because we bid it, and the bids were less expensive than we expected. So we made money we had money to spend, or money in the bank on that account. And then also we've been spending less on soft costs. So from a budget standpoint, that's why that right-hand total cost line is everything we expect to be spent on the project, including pending change orders and pending soft cost expenses through the summer. So we're in a good spot. We still have a significant contingency, over 10% of the project, and we're over halfway done. And that is where we are. Go ahead on to the next slide. So the remaining schedule is to finish up the school year. As I mentioned, we're wrapping up the classes 28, 30, and 31 through the end of the year. We're then going to be renovating the nurses area, classes 11 and 13, and moving into the art room and collaboration space. We're also going to be looking at doing the middle school flooring and the CSE space, which is the downstairs space where we have the handicap lift. We're going to be looking at accelerating that work during the spring term as well. So we're looking at doing all those things before summer. And then in the summertime, there'll be the library renovation, the kindergarten space will be finally renovated, and the music space. And then we'll be doing the main office entrance, the security vestibule, all that scheduled for the summertime, as well as the multi-student toilets in front of the admin area, and the cafeteria renovation, so brand new ceiling, brand new floor in the cafeteria space, which will have a huge impact on that space. And then the entire mechanical system for the middle school is going to be renovated over the summer as well. And the demolition of that is going to be happening in the early part of the summer. And whatever remains of the corridor floors, mainly hopefully in the elementary school if we get the middle school ones done ahead of time. So we're still on track for completion at the end, in September, at the beginning of September in 2022. So we're in a good position. I think that's the last slide. Go ahead and check and see if there's one more. Okay, great. So that was a whirlwind tour. So I'm sorry, I was probably talking too fast. If there's things you guys want to ask or any questions, let me know.
First, thank you. Thank you. Start. That was great. Do I have questions for any of the board members? Facilities committee members? Courtney, go ahead.
Easy question, which I'm assuming I know the answer, and because mainly we've got Madeline who will chime in. All of these change orders, this is just a normal part of the process?
They are.
Because it just takes discovery to learn more about a building, see what changes, prices fluctuate, et cetera?
Well, yes, I think it's a lot of, as I mentioned, the pie chart, the different types of change orders and the sources of them. But yes, this is all standard things. And a lot of it's, we've been going back and forth. We've rejected a lot of change orders, so it's taken a little while to get a lot of them processed because we've been getting pricing that's in some ways has not been appropriate. So we've had to go back. And in some cases, the district has done some things by themselves, like the locker removal. And we just actually finished some abatement this last couple weeks, which we ended up doing it ourselves. The district brought in another vendor, and we did it apart from the general contracts because we need to make sure we're getting you guys good value for all the change orders. So that's even normal as well. That happens, and there's some correction in that. So hopefully, we'll be doing better with the GC, and they'll know to send us more reasonable change orders as we go on, because we're going to have to just do that as we go. If they don't give us the right numbers, we're going to have to just do the work ourselves.
Great. Did you go into the trap door?
Through the nurse's office?
Yeah, that was found, that you didn't know was there?
I didn't go in there.
Did anybody investigate that?
Oh, well, it's not a new space. The crawl space that it accessed, we can get into through the records room.
Oh, I was
And-
just excited that it was a mysterious trap
It's
door,
nothing
that's all.
spooky or fun like that. It had these big pipes in front of it, so you really couldn't get through it readily.
Got it.
But
And my last question is, at the conclusion of all of this, is it safe to assume that the school will then have completely revised and updated records of a plan of all of this, so that in 20 years, when there's another construction project, there isn't, they don't have to, in theory, rip down a wall and be like, hey, look, there was a heater we didn't know about.
Right.
Or there'll be less discovery than what you guys are going through.
Well, it's an old building, and we're not going to rip through every wall. So there always will be things that you find in parts of the building that weren't touched previously. But Tetrotek has prepared a complete set of documents for everything, and they have a 3D model of the building done in Revit. So we have some resources that the district can use for future capital projects. They're not going to be starting from scratch ever again, because that whole building has been modeled. All the systems mechanically are pretty new now. We still have some existing electrical systems, but we have a whole new electrical system that's fully documented. So, a lot of those, those conditions have been fully covered in the documents we have.
Thanks.
Thank you. Madeline?
Thank you for staying on schedule. That's actually a huge thing that we're on schedule. Thank you. And just from the presentation, it proved that this project went out to bid at the right time. Labor was down, escalation was not as high as expected. So some of that, we're seeing it in the increase of additional contingencies. So
Right.
somehow, in the middle of COVID and everything, the fact that the drawings went out to bid, it went out at the right time. If we try to bid the same project today, we would not be where we are now.
There are several things that we did that really helped us. One, even though it's been difficult, bidding out the train equipment separately enabled us to have that delivered by the end of summer or early fall. So we had the chance of having the building renovated during the school year. We were right at the edge. It was getting cold, and we still were fighting for heat. If that hadn't happened the way it did, we would have been in trouble. The other thing is COVID has impacted us. It's delayed a number of our systems. All of our casework is just arriving. We were using those classrooms, 22 to 25, but we got the casework, weeks after we were using it, and it's just now being completed. So, plumbing and other items have been delayed and are just coming in. So we have been impacted by it, but the way we phase the project to do all the bidding and all the procurement in the first summer, and that gives us the time to deal with those supply delays. So even certain items, if we don't have them yet, we have time in next summer to complete the work. So that's given us the flexibility to make sure we have a reliable end date on the project.
That's good. So for the gap in May and June in the schedule, and there's a lot to be done in the summer. Are we going to see some extra costs, especially when it comes to remobilizing on site? And I keep bringing it up because if that's something that will come up, I think you mentioned you might do some work in the middle school, just something to think about, because if we can avoid some of these extra costs, because the subs are going to stop and then pick up again in 2 months, that would be good to think about now.
The delay in the schedule is built into the contract, so there's no damages for delay in this contract. If we don't have any obligation to do the work, and right now the contractors are interested in accelerating the work because they typically are busier in the summer, and they'd rather get some work done in the school year, even at second shift, so it frees up their forces for other projects in the summer. This project captures their bonding capacity. So if we enable them to finish on schedule and get work done, they can reduce their bonding commitment and take other projects. So they have a vested interest in getting it done on time or even early, and we don't anticipate costs for that. And there's no reason why we would need to. If that's what they say, if we go to them and we say, well, we'd like to do the CSE area, we're going to give you the music room, and we're going to use a different room as a music room, so we can do the lift in advance, and they say, well, that's going to cost you $20,000, we'll say, okay, well, let's not do that then. We'll just wait until the summer, just per the schedule, and they're obligated to meet that schedule. So we don't have any requirement. Right now we're in a really good place in terms of the phasing. We can let them go in the pace per the schedule, and we don't have to do anything in advance. We don't have to pay for it.
Okay, all right. My last question is, so right now, we're up to $395,000 in change order to date. And all of these change orders, they make sense for building existing renovations. It's the nature of the beast. That's fine.
Well, it includes the pending, 100,000 pending.
The pending. It
that we're
includes
still
the pending.
negotiating, that might go
Right.
down, hopefully.
So thinking that averaging out 395 to date, how much more, can you clarify, how much more do we have in contingency without that 395? That will take us to the end?
750,000.
So that's an extra 750.
Beyond all that number, we have 750,000.
Okay, all right. So we're in really good shape. Really good shape. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do I have other questions? I have one regarding the middle school flooring.
Yeah.
Do you need to move the middle school out to do that in the spring?
No, it's just the corridors. The classrooms aren't getting the flooring
Okay,
replacement.
so they would do it they can do it
Well,
second shift without
we do it
disrupting.
spring break, probably.
Oh, okay.
We don't want to cause that much disruption during the school year. So there's, we do the flooring, and we try to hit some of the unit ventilators. We have it all packed in the bus garage right now. We have a lot of equipment here to install, and it behooves us to get it in the building. So, yeah, it will not be impacting the school operations at all.
Okay, great. Well, then without any other further questions, I'd like to say thank you. This paints a really great picture of where we are. It seems like, I know from your description of the change orders, definitely we have initiated some, you have as well. But I think in the end, we're going to be really happy with the final product because we haven't cut corners and said, oh, we'll wait and do that next time. We will skip taking the lockers out, for example, and leave the old ones in. So I think these are wise decisions overall, and it sounds like you worked really well with our admin team to make them. So I appreciate
You
the,
guys give the direction, and we're doing our best to follow suit, and it seems to be working out pretty well so far.
let's keep it going.
Be on the case on New Year's Eve.
There's no work scheduled for New Year's Eve. I know. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Oh, and my chocolate. Thank you.
Yeah, take your chocolate. Okay, Jesse, I'm not going to forget, we're going to go to our change orders real quick in case anyone has questions. Give me just a second. Okay, we're going to then move to new business, item D, request for approval of change orders. Meyer 11, Meyer 12, Meyer 13, Meyer 14, Meyer 15, Meyer 16, Meyer 17. Whereas the school district entered into a contract with Meyer Contracting Corporation, contractor, dated June 3rd, 2021, the contract, for the performance of general construction work in connection with the school district's reconstruction project, and whereas the school district desires and/or requires the addition of services and/or materials to be performed by contractor in connection with the project. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District approves change order numbers Meyer 11, Meyer 12, Meyer 13, Meyer 14, Meyer 15, Meyer 16, and Meyer 17, which are attached to this resolution, authorizes the President of the Board of Education or the Superintendent of Schools to execute such change order on behalf of the school district and ratifies any action already taken by either of them in that regard, and further authorizes and ratifies all actions taken by the board president, superintendent of schools, or either of their designees to effectuate the requirements of the change order. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Do we have any questions regarding these change orders as reviewed? Okay. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays? Abstentions? Okay. Next, we have request for approval of change orders Bertucci 1, Bertucci 2, Bertucci 3. Whereas the school district entered into a contract with Bertucci contractor, dated June 3rd, 2021, the contract for the performance of general construction work in connection with the school district's reconstruction project, and whereas the school district desires and/or requires the addition of services and/or materials to be performed by contractor in connection with the project. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District approve change order numbers Bertucci 1, Bertucci 2, Bertucci 3, which are attached to this resolution, authorizes the President of the Board of Education or the Superintendent of Schools to execute such change order on behalf of the school district, and ratifies any action already taken by either of them in that regard. And further authorizes and ratifies all actions taken by the Board President, Superintendent of Schools, or either of their designees to effectuate the requirements of the change order. May I have a motion, please? Thank you. Any questions regarding these change orders? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstentions. Thank you. Cross those off to remind myself not to repeat that again later on this evening. We might just for fun. Why not? Okay, next up on our discussions, we have a gun safety discussion. I'll introduce this. This was brought forth by two of our members, David and Jocelyn. So I'm going to let you guys kick it off as to where you wanted to go with this discussion before we open up the floor.
You know,
David?
on my way over here tonight, I heard a report on CNN about the shocking increase in gun homicides in the U.S. this year. I mean, 35-40% increase in throughout the country, which sort of makes this even more timely than I had initially thought. I mean, basically, after the Oxford, Michigan thing happened, the shooting happened. I think I mentioned before that I try to put myself in the head of a school board member in Oxford, and whether he or she would have regretted not having taken more aggressive action on gun control in advance of what happened there. So I did a little research, and turns out that there are about 26 states. Majority of the states have child gun access prevention laws. New York is not one of them. There is a Phillipstown statute, which is a little, which is not really enforceable, and which essentially holds parents responsible for if they're not in the house, kids are not supposed to have access to guns. I've tried to find out if there's been any history of enforcement on that. I'm not aware of any history of enforcement on that. The Cold Spring police don't really want to talk about it. And it was, I was advised by Eliza Starbuck over at the Cold Spring Board to check with Sheriff Langley, or with the sheriff. It's not Langley anymore, which I have not done. But anyhow, it does seem to me that what we could reasonably do is to think about, it feels like an oversight that New York State, maybe as an intentional oversight, has neglected to pass a child access prevention law. And not just in terms of rifles, but there's also the fact that they don't differentiate between rifles and automatic or semi-automatic weapons, which is what was used in the Oxford case, which is just insane that kids have access to those kind of weapons. So what occurred to me, but Jocelyn and I have talked about this, and we don't have any particular specific proposal to make, as much as wanting to have a discussion. But maybe one thing that we could do is to propose to Sandy Galluff, a state senator, who I think is very strong on the issue of gun control, to introduce something in the state legislature that would remedy this oversight of the New York State's failure to have a statute involving preventing kids from getting access to guns.
Okay. Jocelyn, did you want to do something?
Some of the stuff we talked about. I don't know, before I even say anything, has anyone else thought about, what happened, the news we heard today on several fronts about gun violence? Do you think the board needs to do anything?
I'll jump There, in response to that, in looking through some of the research, I started thinking less about, I can see the point of requesting, or the word is escaping me right now, but sort of reaching out to our other elected officials regarding new laws. But New York does have some strong gun control laws. And working within that, thinking about what are we doing within our building? And does it go beyond laws to make it safe? So are we, in some of the, I read through that everytown.org has a comprehensive plan for schools on what you should do for gun safety. And a lot of it isn't about necessarily, there's references to some of these laws and it breaks it down by state. But it's talking about, do we have the comprehensive student threat assessment program in our school? What are we doing more for mental health? Do our teachers, do our school officials understand how to use the extreme risk laws? For example, I think most of the studies show that if a student is planning something, whether to harm themselves or harm others with a gun, somebody's probably heard about it or heard something. So when that information is brought forth, where do they go with it? What action is taken? So that's more what I've been thinking about, is less about reaching out, but more going through what we're doing now, thinking about, is this enough? Are there other things we could add? Do our teachers and administrators have questions about what the proper procedures are or need more supports in this area? And I think that goes in part with the laws, but also more towards really school culture, and mental health almost. And then the thing that I was struck by that kept coming up was public awareness is key. So, before this, you had to sort of look up, what are the laws here, things like that. Maybe we need to work in conjunction with some of our law enforcement officers to help raise awareness of what the laws are here, and for our students and for our community. Those are just my thoughts. Anyone else want to jump in or have thoughts? Or Madeline, go for it.
I do agree that aside from looking what we as a school can do with the safety policies and regulations, to send letters out to Sandy Gallif as a school saying, hey, it would be great if you can take this up, because it definitely would lower any risk of that ever happening in our district. So whatever as a school we can do, sending out letters, I think that would help. We may not have control of what happens, but at least we can show that we would like some support on this.
I mean, the issue in Michigan was parental negligence. And that's what's not controlled. I mean, certainly there are things that New York State is doing or that individual schools are doing. But the Michigan case involved parents who made it possible for a kid to have an automatic weapon. And there's nothing in New York State law that prevents, that holds parents accountable for negligence having to do with minors' access to guns. And it seems to me that's a gaping hole in the legal system.
What you're bringing up in the sense of parents or community members, I started thinking a little bit like broader than just gun safety or gun violence, and thinking just, actually was inspired by a meeting we had with the DEI committee where Courtney brought up how a year or so ago the PTA helped sponsor a talk for parents on sex education. And so I'm going somewhere with this, I swear. So I'm kind of thinking that, instead of always reacting, not us, but just in general, right? We react to a new variant, or we react to a, gun shooting in a school. If we had something that we just committed to as a district that was maybe, annual parent engagement on a or, that PTA and the board collaborates on, that every September is about sex ed, every October is about, gun violence and mental health, and we kind of did just monthly sessions that always and regularly engaged our parent community so that it wasn't always reactionary. And then, in those kind of settings, it's, did you know that we have a gun safety law or a gun storage law in Phillipstown where you can be fined $1,000? Do you know how to get a lock for your gun? The things that are very tangible so our parents kind of know what to do. Because I think awareness, like you brought up, is one of the things that most people didn't know about New York State's laws, right? The fact that you can own a gun at 16, 17, 18, and 19 in this state, any kind of gun besides a handgun. Most people don't know that. Anyway, so that is to say that I'm kind of trying not to react too much on one issue and actually try to step back and think of broadly what can we do that might address, like the Narcan training, sorry, I just thought of that Nurse Melissa did with parents. That kind of stuff we could just kind of regularly build in, so it just kind of builds the strength and cohesiveness of the community that would be a little bit more supportive on issues like this. In addition to writing letters to Serino and Galef, I think you can't go wrong with that.
My only thought on the letters is I'd like to be very specific about what we're asking for. For example, and how does it work with the other laws? Some of our laws are currently being challenged in the courts as well in New York State. So are we addressing those? Which ones are we going after? So, are we talking about raising the minimum age for purchase? Are we talking about, is it just access? Is there a law specifically in another state that New York could replicate? I'm not saying I'm in favor or not of any of those ideas, but more just, if we're going to write a letter, we should all look at it, and it should be something specific that we're asking for, not a generalization.
And we probably should get some legal guidance from someone.
We've got
about
lawyers.
some legal guidance about what's plausible, what actually can work. And I know that the 2008 local statute was built around a Supreme Court decision which made it unconstitutional to deprive someone of the opportunity for self-defense. So they have this thing about how if a parent is not in their home, they can't allow access to a kid. Now I don't know whether but somehow 26 states have found a way to have these laws, and as far as I know, they're still in effect. So maybe the next step is to get some legal counsel on this. And come in with a specific document for people to consider.
I think we should definitely do that. These don't seem mutually exclusive at all, the stuff about sending out and proposing things at the state level and making sure that our community is educated. Without getting into the specifics, it also feels like the security piece is kind of the least feel-good, but perhaps most important piece in terms of actually preventing an atrocity from happening, because there's a minority report element to all the education we can do about how to predict who's going to do what. I mean, if that was possible, it seems like this would never happen. And you could interpret any number of things that a kid is doing that is totally innocent. So I think we should do it, but it doesn't inspire a ton of confidence in me that we would be able to ever figure out. It's possible, I'm sure it's possible, and I defer to the experts on that. And then also, I mean, my cynicism hat is on for both of these things. They both are good ideas, and I'm feeling a little hopeless in the face of this, although that's not a reason not to try. And then, so again, the least feel-good piece to me is the security piece, which is doesn't give me good feelings about the human condition, but it feels like the piece that might stop not a student, but an outsider from doing something horrible. And so that is a priority as well.
Thank you. Ken?
I would agree with Matt. I mean, I probably am a little on the hopeless side as well, so I think letters are great. I don't think a law is going to stop a parent who's negligent from not being negligent, but I do and think of holding them to account is important. But I do think security is ultimately the difference maker if something is to happen. So I'm definitely supportive of that.
So maybe in addition to looking at language, we would also want to see, the one program I found, Carl, maybe you could help us with some research here, is the comprehensive student threat assessment that seems to have been adopted following the Virginia programs. But if there's others out there, this may be a question more for our BOCE safety coordinator as well, as to what program might help us, that we could add to the safety school plan that we adopt every year.
I definitely worry about focusing on this and then running into some proposal from whoever it might be that we increase security in some way, like by getting an SRO. I mean, so this is the problem with talking about all this stuff, is I personally don't, that is not an evidence-based way to prevent this kind of violence, and so I'm very concerned about drawing too much attention to the idea of it all, in a sense, too, because I'm like, I don't want to derail into discussion we have, continuously over the years is security, so to say. I don't know. Does that make sense?
I agree. There's a lot, though, that speak to the, how do you do threat assessment without an SRO? It really is more of a mental health issue then in many of these documents of making school, we are funding, which we do have a school psychologist, somebody there who's really knowing the kids, knowing how our students are feeling and what's going on in their lives. So I think that's that we would have to look at a model then that speaks to that. Matt, sorry.
I mean, I just don't think these things are in opposition at all. I feel like the advocacy for law is vital, mental health is vital, and security is vital. I think taking your eye off the ball on any of them is willfully negligent because they're all potentially something that could protect the community. Security is a broad term, I agree, but there's tons of things. I mean, there's simple things like single door access and stuff, just things like that. Making sure things are being upkept, emergency button, things like that. Just things that are not particularly intrusive, don't change the culture of a community, kids don't even know about it, and yet it's there, and it's keeping them safe. So.
Understand that we have obviously our primary responsibility is to our own community, but we have another responsibility, which is to the state, and we care about this happening not just in Garrison or Phillipstown, but elsewhere. And I think the idea of setting a standard and injecting this notion into the public discourse is something that might be helpful statewide, not just here.
If there'd be a way to get in terms of the outreach part, I think if there's a way to get the letter so that it wasn't just from our district.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy to stand up for the letter that we're going to end up writing, but if it was signed by.
Signed by a lot of different districts.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I know then you start to wade into politics, but
that would be more.
it feels like that would carry more weight in the state legislature. Not that Garrison doesn't pack a punch, but more than one punch would help.
Is this something that NISBA is maybe worth looking into with NISBA? Because they might be having this conversation also.
Do you have a contact through NISBA that you could reach out to?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe
Yes.
that would be a good place to start then, Madeline, as the liaison, just see what they're thinking.
If we want to send letters to our local representatives, it might, like Matt said, make sense to say to Haldane, would you want to do this together to, and I'm not fully briefed on the boundaries of the New York State Senate and, I don't even, is it a House or is it Senate?
House and Senate.
It's different in every state. But maybe where we share representatives, we could do it together. Probably would pack a little bit more impact. If they're willing to do it.
Well, and just quickly, why not? I mean, only because you brought up the sheriff's department, is there a role for addressing our county level government too? I have no idea what kind of jurisdiction they have, but I mean, I'd be happy to look into, can they pass something that would hold more weight than the state level? Just like Phillipstown passed the safe storage law 2 years before New York State did. We have home rule in New York State, so if a county can pass something, even if the state doesn't, does it hold any water?
Anything to add, anyone?
No, I would just say that, you know, we certainly, we have our building safety team, our emergency response team. We do work closely with both police agencies that are first responders here, of course, the sheriff's office, as well as the state troopers. They do participate in lockdown drills. It's mutually beneficial. They learn about our building. We develop a rapport, and they've been fantastic and very responsive. The only other thought you know, as you talked about it being a mental health issue, you know, I do agree. And it's very comforting that here in Garrison, we probably have the strongest student counselor ratios. The American Academy of School Psychologists recommends 250 to 1. Well, we are, you know, 100 students per counselor. We have our psychologist, our guidance counselor, and we have a huge advantage that we are smaller and we know our children and we know our families.
So, again, I do think all of these prongs are really important. And again, without getting overly political, the mental health stuff's vital, but not the cause, right? The guns are the cause, in my opinion. I've gotten in trouble for saying that in other contexts, but so obviously I'm all for mental health support, and definitely, but that's not the best mental health care, and this isn't just about Garrison, won't stop the shooting epidemic. Gun safety will stop the shooting epidemic. So I think ultimately we should be doing all these things, but if in the context of this conversation, I think the legislation and the security will have more of an impact on preventing shootings. Although that's not to say in the larger context of life, they're any more important than the mental health support. They're absolutely not, and I would never say that they are. But in terms of preventing violence, I do think they are actually more important, if that's the goal in this particular conversation, because there's mental health in every community, mental health challenges in every community on planet Earth, and that's not where you find the correlation to violence. Where you find the correlation to violence is through the guns. So these are separate conversations, in my opinion, and we should be the best. And I take your point, Sarah, for sure, about being aware and understanding who's potentially going to do something, but without a gun, they can't do anything. So the access to guns has to be prevented, and that's where the legislation is really important and where I think the security is really important.
No, I do see that point and agree. I will point out, when we talk about this, we should also be mindful that, yes, the mass shootings get a lot of the attention, but we're also talking about suicides. We're talking about a lot of other instances of gun violence.
And again, in that context, the mental health is really important. So I think it's also important to identify what we're talking about and what our goal is. If we're talking about mass school shootings, which of course get the headlines, that is both a related conversation to suicide and other gun violence, and it's a conversation unto itself.
It's all very interconnected.
It is
It's not a
interconnected.
very black and white issue.
It's not a
which-
black and white issue,
very
but
clear.
there are different solutions for different things. Like there are things that would prevent mass school shootings that would not prevent suicides, for example. Right?
Any other comments or questions? Thoughts?
To be clear, I guess what I would like to do is to work with anybody else who's interested on drafting a proposal, you know, I mean, with some legal guidance and some discussion also of who else we might enlist to be part of this effort. What other school boards or communities?
Why don't we start with, so Madeline, you're going to reach out to NISBA. David, and somebody want to work with David on the letter? Matt, you do?
If I could just circle back to one thing that Jocelyn said, I think I like that monthly idea for precisely this reason. Issues are all interrelated, but if you make a meeting or an agenda about one thing, then you focus in on that, and then solutions that would help with that would help with the others. So if one issue was mass shootings and one issue is suicide prevention, there's going to be things that help prevent both of those, but there's also going to be things that are specifically targeted to each of them. So I like the idea of coming up with agenda items and then targeting them.
We could ask some of our other administrators, perhaps in the building, to look at as a monthly calendar of topics.
Yeah, we could probably, you know, even partner with our PTA and maybe bring in some some guest speakers and experts in each field, so definitely.
Yeah, because we have a history of several successful types of workshops like that. So we could just bring them back in for what they've done already, and then add some more experts on some of these other topics that are more fresh in this community.
Definitely will follow up.
Okay, so we've got the letter, the monthly calendar, and then we will also circle back on what our current safety guidelines are and anything we can do there. I think that gets everything. And then once we have the letter, it might be appropriate at that time to reach out to other districts, perhaps, using our liaisons. Does everyone agree? Okay, awesome. All right, thank you very much. We will now move on to public comment. Okay. I don't see anyone here for public comments. I'm not going to read this whole paragraph for all of you. You've heard it before. But I will say that going forward, we will have public comment following all of our presentations, and again at the end, should anyone have any comments regarding the meeting. And we definitely welcome and encourage the public to join us. If you have any other questions, comments, you're always welcome to send an email as well, or reach out to the appropriate administrator. Okay, next up is President's remarks. I really don't have anything other than wishing everyone a happy holiday season and thanking you for your work so far this year. I know this is time-consuming, and hopefully you all enjoy it as much as I do. Okay, going on, we have Superintendent's remarks.
Mine will be brief. Also, I wish everyone a happy holiday, you and your families. Let me just point out that the county's positivity rate as of yesterday was 6.7%. This is about where we were last winter, January, February. So that is a pretty disturbing spike. On a positive note, though, we're doing really well with vaccinations. Our staff is 99% vaccinated. Our staff who works directly with students are 100% vaccinated. Our younger children in K through 6 are 50% vaccinated with first dose. And our middle school, our grades 7 and 8, are 66% vaccinated. So these are all very encouraging and positive things here in our community, but then, of course, you see this positivity rate spiking, not just here, everywhere. And it's just a good reminder that we need to be cautious. We need to maintain, unfortunately, the masking protocol, the other protocol. And I would just say with the holiday coming up, a lot of families and a lot of us have travel plans, which is great, but the school offers, free testing. Tests are expensive, and sometimes they're hard to obtain, but Nurse Melissa has never turned away any request to test your children. So please, we always do that on a Monday morning, but we will also test by appointment. So if you're either would like a test before travel or when you return from travel, we are happy to provide that. So please take her up on the offer. And that's all I have.
Data of the 6.7% incidence in Putnam County, how many of those folks were vaccinated and how many not?
Great question. In speaking with the Department of Health, the Putnam superintendents meet with the Putnam County Department of Health every Monday. And they are saying that the vast majority are people who are not vaccinated. However, people with 2 doses where it's starting to weaken and have not received their booster are also testing positive. And what they're seeing here locally is that if you have your booster, there are very few cases. Now, that's only here in Putnam. It's a small county, but that is what they're reporting to us. So if you have your booster shot as an adult or young children that are getting their second dose, they are not seeing them test positive.
Did they give you any sense of where hospitalization rates compared to last winter as versus cases versus last winter? Like, are the cases any more mild this winter, or is it about the same?
Yeah, I did ask what they are seeing, Matt. The other shift that they're seeing is more positives with children and unvaccinated children. They don't have hospitalization for children because we don't have a pediatric hospital here in Putnam. So they don't have that data. But the hospitalization rates are for adults, unvaccinated adults for the most part, are where they were about a year ago.
Also, just really quickly, the 6% thing is a positivity rate, not an incidence rate. And so I just want to make sure, like, that doesn't mean that 6% of Putnam County has COVID. It just means that 6% of people who got tested positive.
Correct.
So I just don't want us to think we're living in a high prevalent state.
I believe.
Well, I'm not commenting, that's a
Yeah, I mean,
crazy
it's definitely
spike.
going like this.
And that's because,
It's well under 1 during the spring.
right.
Yeah.
But they just make sure they're different rates.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And the only other thing I will add to that is, we've only had a handful of cases here at the school, but we really are not seeing spread here in school, which means our protocol, our ventilation, our distancing, all the things that we have been doing, our surveillance testing seems to be working. Also a year ago, there were more unknowns, and there was no vaccine. But this is not all doom and gloom, but I think it is a reminder that we still need to be cautious, and certainly we're here to support families anytime. They just need to reach out to Nurse Melissa, and she's an excellent resource.
Okay? Sure.
Is there any more information about the email that came out about, this is more related to our last conversation about the TikTok, or is that, I wasn't clear, I might have missed something, what made that TikTok, was that TikTok particularly relevant to Putnam County? Or was that just like a national TikTok?
Sure. We were in the middle of our coherence planning session today, and our principal was called out. A student, middle school student, reported that they read something on TikTok that on Friday there would be, shootings in schools, that type of thing. Although Allison was not able to read it at that point in time, she right away reached out to the Putnam County Sheriff's Office. They do monitor these types of things. It was not directed at Garrison, not directed at any particular school. It was one of those things that maybe went viral. How viral, I don't know, but it was out there. Our children picked up on it. I give them a lot of credit for reporting, and that is what we encourage them to do, so they did exactly what we want them to do. But the sheriff assured us that it's not a credible threat and that there's no threat to any school in Putnam County. They're going to monitor it, but they really said there was no reason to be concerned, Matt.
Okay. Any other follow-up questions or comments for Carl? Okay. Moving on, we will go to accept the minutes. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby accept the minutes of the December 1, 2021 regular meeting. May I have a motion, please?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstentions. Okay. Financial reports. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District does hereby accept the Treasurer's Report for November 2021 and the Claims Audit Report for November 2021 as presented. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Joe's here with us tonight on the Treasurer's Report for November or the Claims Audit Report. Joe, did you have any comments or exciting things to say about these reports? You really don't have to.
I don't.
Okay. All right. All in favor of accepting them, please say aye. Aye. Nays? Abstentions? Okay. Next, we have the acceptance of revised corrective action response external audit 2020. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby accepts the revised district corrective action plan in response to the external auditor's fiscal report for the year ending June 30th, 2020. May I have a motion, please? Okay. Anyone have any questions regarding the revised corrective action report? Or Joe, is there anything you want to add on this? I know it's been shared with the audit committee, and I thank you for that.
I would add is there were a number of items that didn't have end dates in the original corrective action, and that was one of the things that we had to correct. So we revised it based upon that guidance and are resubmitting it.
Thank you for doing that. Do you have any questions, comments, follow-ups on this report? Okay. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstentions. Thank you. Next, we have the acceptance of the Corrective Action Response Internal Audit 2021. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District does hereby accept the district corrective action response to the internal auditor's report dated June 18th, 2021. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Does anyone have any questions? Do you have anything to add on our response to the internal audit? I will say that we did an internal audit last year. We are not required to do so given our size, but it had been a number of years since we did one, so we felt it was time to do so. Nope, no questions? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstentions. Thank you. Next, we have the acceptance of the Corrective Action Response External Audit 2021. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District does hereby accept the district corrective action plan in response to the external auditor's fiscal report for the year ending June 30th, 2021. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Any questions regarding this corrective action response to the audit presentation we saw this October? Joe, any? Nope, okay. All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstentions. Okay, next up, we have committee reports for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Jocelyn?
Hi, so we all met December 7th, and our next meeting is in February. And I think pretty much one of the, and chime in if you think I'm missing anything, I think one of the main things we talked about previously and then at this meeting was the kind of desire to have a shared understanding of what the DEI work was, which means we have to try to implement some form of professional development or ongoing community training. So, you know, Carl has worked, and we all know April Francis, and Carl reached out to April and has secured her services to provide a couple of days of PD in the upcoming semester for the spring semester. I don't think the content of those days is not decided. It's going to be kind of decided in a collective fashion with administration and faculty and April together, kind of deciding what they think might be best for the staff and faculty. And they'll be meeting in January to do that, and then April will deliver that kind of content that they ask for in the couple of PD days. She'll also provide kind of ongoing support for, you know, as our faculty and staff go through this kind of training. And I think the major goal of that is, like, how do we get most people on a similar page? They may not be on the same page, but how do we kind of equalize everyone so that we can keep this work moving forward? And then on a similar vein, you know, how do we get parents, community members to also kind of value this type of work, or at least understand when and why and how it's going on in the school. So there's a couple other people who are collaborating with Desmond Fish, Butterfield, Haldane, to work on that at a community level. Anything else?
Community read.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about
Yeah, talk about that.
community read. We talked about, it's interesting, it actually kind of ties together with what you were just saying in terms of the gun discussion, but I guess it was, the larger conversation is how to get more people involved and bring in members of the community, parents. And so the idea was, I guess, like proposing a monthly book or even, and then that switched to even perhaps a suggested podcast or a movie or a TV show of things to share with, and then perhaps have a discussion, sort of a la the sex education talk at Dolly's from years ago.
It's not set in stone, we're just working on it.
Just tossing around ideas.
Yeah. Matt, anything I missed? No. Thank you.
I just have one question. With the PD days, are those going to be pulling out teachers, or will it be on superintendent's days?
We have 2 remaining superintendent's conference days, and April has those dates. I asked her to hold those dates. It will not be the entire day because, of course, we have several other initiatives, but it'll be a portion of those 2 days. No pullouts, no substitutes needed.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding the DEI committee report? Comments, thoughts? Okay. Next up, we have the facilities committee report. Matt?
And that concludes my facility. Oh, we got cut off. Well, it was a successful week, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all, everyone on the facilities committee, for all the work you're putting in. Really appreciate it. Okay, we're going to move on now, unless anyone has any comments on that. Okay. Next, we have the consent agenda for personnel items. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of Carl L. Albano, Superintendent, hereby approves the items of the personnel consent agenda as presented. May I have a motion, please?
So moved. Seconded.
Thank you. Carl, do you want to speak to these?
Sure. Just a couple of comments. One recommendation is for Jared Gonzalez to be a part-time or serve as a part-time music teacher for grades K through 6. Jared started with us as a substitute teacher earlier in the year. He's done really good work. He has invested, his lesson planning, his commitment seems to be there. We are impressed. He has a bachelor degree in music from SUNY Potsdam, Crane School of Music. He's a beginning teacher, but he shows a lot of promise. You may recall the vacancy was created. We had a very late summer resignation from our permanent music teacher. So Jared did come on board. It's a difficult time to run a search. We did post. The response was not that strong, but we have been impressed. And he's doing the planning. He's doing all of the work of a teacher, at least for part of his day. So I think it's fair to recommend him as a part-time teacher. It'll increase his compensation a bit for the hard work that he's doing. He is supplemented by our band teacher, Jeff Barone, who's working with primarily middle school age students. We have our chorus teacher now, Linda Speciale, who is settled in and doing beautifully. And we also have Callista Parrish working with theater. So it really completes our performing arts department. They're collaborating really well. It's exciting to see. So I do recommend him, and I think he will do a good job. And by the way, the appointment is till the end of the year, and then we will reevaluate all the positions. Also, there's a substitute on here, or actually several substitutes, excuse me. 2 are certified, 1 is not. I know I keep bringing substitutes, but that is because we need to replenish our substitute teaching ranks to provide coverage. Some of the great hires that we made earlier in the year have already moved on to full-time teaching jobs. So I will continue every so often to bring substitute recommendations, and we will certainly get them acclimated, transition them in, and work with them and make sure they're serving us well. And that is primarily Allison's responsibility. Oh, and thank you, Dusty. We have the resignation for the purpose of retirement of Mr. Michael Twardy, our Director of Facilities and Transportation. So Michael has been considering retirement for several months now. He does have some great plans that he has shared with me. It's bittersweet because I'm happy for Michael. but he really has done a lot of tremendous work for the district. When I came on board, Michael was invaluable. Last year, midst of a pandemic, getting transportation up and running, increasing all of our protocol for cleaning and maintaining the building. So he has been wonderful, and I'm going to miss those 4:30, 5 a.m. phone calls to tell me about the snow conditions out there during the winter. But the good news is Michael is going to stay with us through February. He's offered to work with us in transitioning, so Joe, myself, and Michael have been having a lot of in-depth conversations about a smooth transition. So I just thank him for his wonderful service to Garrison, and I wish him well.
All right, well, jump in with a congratulations to Michael on his retirement. He has been amazing, and we are going to miss him. Anyone else have any questions, comments, or thoughts on the consent agenda before I move to a vote? Yeah, go.
So it's going to be a loss to the district to see Michael go, but I'm sure he's going to enjoy his retirement. With the capital plan going on, he knows the facility. He knows also the design of the new mechanical equipment and what it's intended to do, and he knows what are some of the infrastructure items that it's not covered as part of the capital plan, and probably knows what are the top priorities. So as part of, I guess before he goes, if there is some sort of transitioning of just knowledge of the facility. You can't transfer several decades of knowledge, but as much as possible, especially on the new equipment that's being installed, and top priorities of what the district should focus on next when it comes to the infrastructure.
Also, he has offered, although he is very much looking forward to retirement, he did say if we need some additional transition time, even beyond February, that he would make himself available to us. So if we think that's necessary, I would certainly come back to the board and be happy to recommend some additional time just to make sure this is a smooth transition. But thank you.
Any other further comments or questions regarding the consent agenda before I move to a vote?
Actually, one quick question about substitutes. They're not, 'cause I'm thinking of New York City, they're not required to be vaccinated against COVID, right?
There is no requirement, but they are all vaccinated.
Awesome.
So we are, when I mentioned earlier that 99% number, it includes the substitutes. Yes, we do ask for their proof of vaccination.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? All right. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstentions. Next up, we have new business. We have CSE, CPSE recommendations. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District approve the Committee on Special Education, CSE, and the Committee on Preschool Special Education, CPSE, recommendations and student placements 17495, 17438, and 17542. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstentions. Next, we have the approval of standard workday and reporting resolution. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, location code 73704, hereby establishes the following standard workdays for appointed officials and will report the following days' work to the New York State and local employees retirement system based on the timekeeping system records or the record of activities maintained and submitted by these officials to the district clerk. I don't need to read that chart, right, Dusty? Okay, great. May I have a motion, please?
Seconded.
Okay. Any questions regarding the approval of standard workday and reporting resolution? Okay. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstentions. Next, we have the request for approval to provide Section 41J pension benefit for ERS employees. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of Carl L. Albano, Superintendent, does hereby elect to provide the pension benefit, of Section 41J of the Retirement and Social Security Law, the allowance of unused sick leave credits, as presently or hereafter amended, and be it further resolved that the effective date of such shall be the 16th day of December, 2021. May I have a motion, please? Okay. Any questions regarding this?
Yeah, I would just say for clarification, this was negotiated back in the spring for the SRP contract. So it is an added benefit. It's a minimal cost to the district, but it does allow ERS employees to use their sick days and apply them towards pension credit time. So this is the final step that is required to provide that benefit.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays? Abstentions? All right, we've done D and E. Next up, we're back to public comment. I don't see any comments, so I'm not going to read the paragraph. I am going to move on then to board member comment and other discussion. Jocelyn? No comment. Okay. David? No comment. Okay. Madeline? No comment. Courtney?
Happy holidays, I hope it snows.
Really? Kent?
No comment.
Matt? Okay, I have no comment as well. We do not have a reason to enter executive session this evening, so that brings us to item 16, adjournment. Ooh, 8:30, okay. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby adjourns the meeting of December 15th, 2021. May I have a motion, please?
Seconded.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays? Abstentions? All right, we got it in at 8:28. Woo-hoo.
Killing it these days on these speedy.